The human brain is complex and has superior processing capabilities compared to any electronic computer, at least up until the present time. It can push your senses beyond ordinary limits with infinite imagination. Many believe that the brain has much more potential than we know, even more than what it itself can conceive. In some aspects, we even know more about the distant regions of the galaxy than we do about the brain. Do you wonder how the brain works? Or what makes the difference between the intelligence of a genius and an ordinary person? Can a person possess extraordinary abilities based on the power of their brain? That is what we will try to understand in today's video: the true power of the brain. We will start here, Seattle, Washington, USA. Researchers working at the University of Washington and the Institute for Learning and Brain Sciences have published the results of a special study on the human brain. That is, a baby when born can learn any language of communication in the world. This means that the baby has always had a remarkable ability from the moment of birth. The research indicates that newborns also have truly wonderful intelligence. They can actually learn and remember even the smallest movements related to themselves. There are approximately 800 different languages and communication sounds used relatively widely around the world. But most of us, when we grow up, only use about 40 of those communication sounds. It is astonishing that a newborn baby can hear and distinguish the differences among more than 800 such sounds. Children are always endowed with awareness, even when they do not truly understand it. Do you pay attention to these sounds? When a child begins to speak, they do not do so meaninglessly. If you listen to them very carefully, very slowly, you will realize that the baby is trying to repeat the same sound. A kind of word in communication. We hear a random sound that is heard every day, then we repeat it until we get it right and produce this magical sound. Looking at a newborn's brain is like looking at a sponge with the most complex structure in the world. It can truly absorb everything from its surroundings and then gradually be filtered, losing things as it develops into adulthood. In terms of body ratio, a newborn's brain is much larger than an adult's brain. Their brain weighs 370-390 g, accounting for 12 to 13% of body weight, while an adult's brain weighs 400 g, making up 2.3 to 2.8% of body weight. A supercomputer is inside our heads. What we know about it today is the result of millions of years of evolution, thousands of years of recorded history, and hundreds of years of modern research. Do you think we have an understanding of the mass that lies within our own bodies? The blunt answer is definitely no. In this world, there are two greatest and most inexplicable mysteries. The first is the question of the birth of the universe, the beginning of life. And the second is when you look in the mirror and suddenly realize that you are truly conscious. You do not know why you have consciousness, where it comes from, how it works, or if it can ever be lost. Then you will realize that the brain is the most complex object in the universe that we know of at this time. What is happening in the brain every second, every minute? It remembers, stores, and extracts necessary information. Every daily action, like a breath, a cup of coffee, a sleep, is impacting the brain. Perhaps the best example for us to understand the functioning of the human brain is an incident that happened nearly 200 years ago, which we will explore right now. The story of a man who lost more than half of his brain and miraculously survived. In 1848, this man was leading his work crew to build a new railway line outside Cavendish, Vermont. His job was to insert explosives into drill holes, then use an iron bar to pack it down and detonate it to break rocks, clearing the way for new long stretches of track. On September 13, 1848, he was working as usual, but while chatting with another worker, he accidentally thrust the iron bar in his hand into a rock. Sparks flew, igniting the explosives in the drill hole and causing it to explode. The iron bar was propelled from its position, striking his left cheek, through his mouth, into his brain, and out through the top of his head. If you had witnessed the scene at that moment, you surely would not believe that he could survive. The injury was truly horrific. However, after a few minutes, a miracle happened. He began to wake up and could speak. He was quickly taken to a resting place while waiting for the doctor to arrive. 30 minutes after the accident, Dr. E.H. Williams finally arrived. He could not believe what was happening before his eyes. He was sitting upright on a chair outside the hotel, talking with those around him. Above his head was a metal rod about 1 meter long, 3 centimeters in diameter, weighing 6 kilograms, covered in blood and brain matter. It had pierced the skull, passing through the left lobes, damaging a significant portion of the brain and pushing the eyeball out of its socket. Everyone thought that with such an injury, he could not survive. But the truth was completely the opposite. He was even calmly and coherently talking as if nothing had happened. It was clear that his brain was severely damaged after being pierced by the metal rod, yet he still survived. After the accident, he lived for another 20 years. But how could his brain continue to function after such a severe accident? The brain is a machine that knows how to learn, automatically rewinding what it has been exposed to. So the person you are now is always different from the person you were a second ago because you have heard, felt, or learned something new. In discovering everything about the brain is perhaps something that will never be possible, because it inherently always changes over time. We know that it is too complex to be fully explored, but we can learn more about it by studying the brains of those who are exceptionally superior to us. To be more precise, those who are extraordinary. What makes an individual stand out in intelligence, emotion, or wisdom? What makes them called a genius? Does their brain reveal some secret, a secret hidden within or not? At the University of California, in June 2018, Tanis Abraham was receiving his graduation degree in his proud bachelor's gown. But unlike other students, Abraham earned his degree when he was only 15 years old. When Tanis was 4 years old, his extraordinary talent was noticed. They conducted an EQ test on Tanis, and they couldn't believe that he answered 99.99% of the test correctly and became the youngest member of the association of the highest EQ individuals in the world. So remarkable, people still cannot know exactly why a genius is born. Is there something special in the brain development of the geniuses we mention? It is not innate. It is not inherited from previous generations. It has certainly undergone some specific influence. If this can be discovered, then the potential to help many more people become geniuses and to harness the brain's abilities more powerfully is extremely vast. Is it possible that the potential for genius always lies within each of us, somewhere deep in our brains? I will provide you with evidence of this, about the case of a man who was not born a genius, but became one when he was nearly 40 years old. He is Derek Amato, a musician and renowned pianist in the United States. He is often mentioned for his talented composing ability and his amazing piano performances. Derek Amato was born on November 19, 1966, in Colorado. In his youth, he was an ordinary student with nothing remarkable. As an adult, Amato worked various jobs to make a living. Everything continued with the daily grind, nothing special until a fateful day in October 2006. Derek Amato returned to visit his parents in his hometown. He and some friends organized a small indoor barbecue party. Here, before the barbecue party started, Derek Amato came up with a game of pool ball. That jump caused Amato to hit his head on the bottom of the pool. The accident left him seriously injured. Friends quickly pulled him up. However, at that moment, Amato was in a semi-comatose state. Amato's mother took her son to the emergency room. There, doctors diagnosed Amato with a traumatic brain injury. He lost 35% of his hearing in his left ear along with memory impairment. It was quite a significant injury, and it was expected to take quite a while to recover. However, strangely, right after the accident, Amato was able to recover and his health almost returned to normal. The doctors were also extremely surprised and decided to let Amato go home for treatment. To cope with the shock after the accident, he decided to go to a close friend's house to relax. And that was also the moment a genius was born. I saw a piano set up in the middle of the house. It was one of those moments when you don't need to know anything. It was set up for me to touch. I placed my fingers on the keys. Oh, and I sat down, becoming proficient and absorbed until 2 a.m. When I close my eyes, I see black and white structures moving from left to right. In fact, they represent in my mind a continuous flow of musical notes. Although Derek Amato had practiced and played the guitar before, his musical ability was only at a normal level and he had no knowledge of playing the piano. In fact, he He had never even touched a piano. Yet now, Amato has become a famous pianist. He frequently has large performances and is proficient in 8 different musical instruments. Every time these melodious tunes are heard, many people still wonder, where does his miraculous ability come from? Overnight, without going through any basic piano lessons, a musical genius was born. I will tell you the secret right now. The answer to that is a syndrome called savant, also known as savant syndrome. You can simply understand this as follows. After certain types of brain injuries or damage to the nervous system, an ordinary person suddenly possesses special skills that they are not even aware of. In this case of Amato, it is very likely that the fall weakened the activity of the left hemisphere of the brain. At the same time, it stimulated the right hemisphere. This hemisphere is believed to perform conscious tasks related to art, maximizing latent potential. The special abilities that Derek Amato possesses indicate that even if we are not born geniuses, there is still a latent power in the brain that cannot be fully explored. Therefore, the question now is, how to unlock the inherent genius ability? To activate it whenever we want? Just imagine if that were to happen, how great a breakthrough we would have in human development. One day, each person walks into a room. There are choices for us to become an Einstein, Mozart, or Picasso according to our preferences. It sounds crazy, but also very exciting. Of course, we would also have to make sacrifices to become a genius. And we do not yet know how much we would have to sacrifice to possess the mind of a scholar after just a few minutes. I do not hope that any of us will experience a swimming pool accident to activate the latent genius within us. Moreover, what if the genius bestowed by the brain is not utilized by a scholar or an artist, but is instead under the control of a criminal? Worse yet, what if it is a serial killer? I believe you know these criminals. They are notorious criminals with genius-level IQs. In the world of cinema and in real life, we have many such individuals. Florida State Prison, January 21, 1989. A few days before the infamous serial killer Ted Bundy was executed, he confessed that he had taken the lives of at least 30 people. Before being here, at this prison, the impending execution was the end of a horrific crime spree that had lasted over a decade. Without needing to be overly knowledgeable, we can immediately recognize that he is the perfect example of a twisted psychopath. Cruel, aggressive, unapproachable, brutal, or ugly are not traits that Ted Bundy possessed. Instead, he had an oddly charming handsomeness. He knew how to win people over. He was even quite kind. In general, Bundy is an ideal model of what you think of as an ordinary person. Only his mind was anything but normal. A bloodthirsty predator deep within him always remained the same. How did a young, charming, and respectable man like Ted Bundy become a cold-blooded psychopath and a serial killer? Was it the influences during his upbringing that transformed Ted's nature, or was he born inherently cruel? There have been many recent studies on psychology and criminal behavior, focusing on the brains of personality-disordered individuals. As a result, we have recognized many commonalities among the brain defects of these individuals. This man, named Andrea, is a psychology professor at the University of Southern California. To observe the brains of murderers, he used a technique called PET scanning. This method allowed him to understand how the brain's functions work, combined with MRI techniques that helped him study brain structure. Rain carefully compared the function and structure of the brains of 41 murderers and 41 people on probation. He discovered that there was lower flexibility in the prefrontal cortex, the area above the eyes and behind the forehead of murderers, compared to the flexibility of normal probationers. These parts of the brain are responsible for empathy and understanding, conscience, or humanity within the ethical standards we often speak of. The prefrontal cortex acts as a barrier in the human brain, restraining the wildness, the animal, within each individual. If these individuals have poor brain function in the prefrontal area, they cannot control and regulate their emotions. This once again raises a larger ethical issue for humanity. Should we continue to research and find ways to arrange and influence to improve the brains of those with psychopathic states to become normal individuals? Or what would happen if someone discovered a newborn with a brain defect similar to that of a serial killer? How should we raise it? Returning to the case of Ted Bundy, the defects in his brain combined with an extremely unhealthy environment created a true monster. Ted was born without knowing who his biological father really was. Ted Bundy's birth certificate is said to acknowledge a father-son relationship with a salesman, a former airman named Lloyd Marshall. However, many reports affirm that Bundy's father's name on official documents was recorded as unknown. For the first 3 years of his life, Bundy lived in a village in Philadelphia with his grandparents, Samuel, who raised him as their own son to avoid societal stigma. However, in 1987, Bundy revealed a truth. He described to lawyers that Samuel was a tyrant, arrogant, and conservative. He discriminated against people of color, Italians, Catholics, and even Jews. He abused his wife and the family dog. He even hung the neighbors' cats by their legs. It seems that the seeds of violence were sown in Bundy's mind early in his childhood. This caused a distortion in his perception that could not be improved later. This somewhat proves that twisted murderers are not born from brain deficiencies, but mostly due to the influence of their external environment. Therefore, if a child has some issues in the prefrontal cortex, we can be completely reassured if they are well cared for and educated. But is the impact of the growing environment enough to explain such cold-bloodedness? Is there something that compels them to commit those horrific acts that has yet to be discovered? Something less tangible, perhaps, that lies within the human brain. Perhaps the answer does not lie in the physical components of the brain that we just discussed, but rather in an invisible realm, something that cannot be seen. In May 2006, Stephen B. Williams, a radio host, mysteriously went missing for 2 weeks. After that, a large force of security personnel and police was mobilized to participate in the extensive search. But despite their efforts, there was not a single trace of him. As things reached a deadlock, a close friend of Williams decided to seek the help of this woman, Angela Smith, a woman with a unique talent to see everything from afar, or what we commonly refer to as clairvoyance. Using her abilities, Smith continuously employed her perception to uncover clues related to the unfortunate victim. She saw water, a lot of water, as if in the middle of an ocean. It seemed that the information wanted to convey to Smith that Williams had been killed by water. Using the information provided by Angela Smith, the Los Angeles police found an unidentified body on the shores of Catalina Island. And of course, it was Stephen B. Williams. As if the story didn't end there, Angela not only provided information about the victim, but also about the person who killed him. After discovering the body, she continued to document the case into an investigative file, which included information about whom Williams had interacted with and whether he had any financial disputes with anyone. The murderer who had taken the life of Stephen B. Williams was eventually caught. And the biggest question certainly belongs to the extraordinary ability of foresight that Angela Smith possessed. The concept of foresight has actually existed for a long time and has been recorded in ancient documents. It's like being able to leave your body, going to a distant place, observing things there, even if it's halfway around the world. I know, there are truly many absurdities in the concept of foresight. But can you believe it, when people once considered using this ability to win the Cold War? Indeed, the Soviets during the Cold War invested tens of millions of US dollars to study phenomena related to psychology and neurology, particularly the ability of clairvoyance. Of course, the Americans could not turn a blind eye. They felt they had to quickly catch up with their opponent in this field. And that was the motivation for the creation of a secret psychic spy force called Project Stargates. The project initially recruited about 20 individuals believed to have psychic abilities. These individuals had to undergo necessary scientific testing, as well as systematic training to become members of the psychic espionage team. They would sit in a dark room and put themselves into a hypnotic state, then described images of a very distant place that appeared in their minds. In 1976, the CIA asked Stargates to search for a Soviet aircraft that had been shot down in a wilderness area in Africa. After efforts to locate it, including satellite imagery, failed, a member of Stargates was able to pinpoint the location of the aircraft and help the military find it quickly. One more mission that people believe Stargates was extremely successful in was spying on the Soviet naval base in 1979. At that time, American psychics described that the Soviets were developing some kind of weapon that looked like a shark. And, shortly after, under direction, satellite images sent back showed that the Soviet naval base was storing this thing. Coincidentally, Akula, in Russian means shark. There were many other missions that proved the psychic spy team built by the CIA had a tremendous impact. With these successes, the US government invested $20 million into the project to expand its scale. However, later on, skepticism grew, the budget was cut. Along with the CIA's wiretapping scandal, the project disbanded in 1995. At this point, we can be sure that the ability to see into the future was operational and even functioning more powerfully than imagined. However, how it works is another question that is even more difficult. Many modern espionage activities often rely on high-tech devices such as receivers, satellites, and computer systems to collect and process data. But, according to those who have practiced the ability to see into the future, such electronic technologies are not suitable for the most complex computer in the world, the human brain. People with clairvoyant abilities believe they can go to a very quiet place in their minds to practice and enhance that special ability. This means that, like the savant syndrome, clairvoyance has always existed within each person. It is similar to a kind of natural intuition that we often talk about. Therefore, we can completely focus on training and unlocking clairvoyant abilities for many people. If this happens, many have raised the question of whether the human brain is capable of storing, processing, or retrieving necessary information if we could see everything in life. Is there a way to brain surgery, accurately record the information received, and then quickly and accurately retrieve that information whenever needed? A startup biotechnology company has announced a controversial project, the plan to upload data from the human brain to electronic computers. They have attempted to preserve the brain and even have a viewpoint that if we cannot resist aging, there is no reason to keep that old, damaged body. Instead, we should find a way to upload the entire brain, including all thoughts, emotions, and memories, to a computer. Then, create a virtual paradise like in the movie Black Mirror and place that simulated brain into an avatar body. Uploading the brain to a computer is related to a field known as whole brain emulation, abbreviated as WB. There are already many technologies supporting this process. It involves a triple constraint in the fields of brain imaging and reconstruction, building processing power and computer memory, and simulating environments in virtual and augmented reality. Let's start with brain imaging, as researchers will also have to begin there. In these scanning technologies, there is a bottleneck that we need to address to advance the technology, which is the connectome. The connectome is a complete map of the brain, including all the neurons and the complex connections between them. Currently, scientists have only established the connectome map of one species, which is the roundworm. The roundworm's brain has only about 302 neurons. In comparison, the number of neurons in the human brain is 86 billion. Not to mention that each neuron in our brain has about 10,000 connections from other segments. The most advanced brain scanning technologies today, such as MRI or MEG, are simply not powerful enough to map the brain. There are other methods that would allow for more detailed brain scans. However, it is true that there is a tendency to cause damage or destroy the brains of living individuals. The most promising scanning technology currently being researched involves using electrodes with thousands of recording points on them. At present, this technology is still extremely invasive to the human body, meaning that extensive surgery is required. Once the electrodes are inserted and accurately placed inside the brain, they will have the capability to display thousands of neurons simultaneously. However, the gap from thousands to 86 billion neurons is still very large. The bottleneck of the connectome still needs to be addressed, regardless of the brain scanning technology used. After transmitting all our memories and thoughts into data, scientists estimate that it could amount to hundreds of zettabytes, 10 to the power of 21 bytes, of data that need to be organized and processed. In comparison, 1 zettabyte is equivalent to 1,000 trillion gigabytes. Our current brain imaging technologies can only process data from individual neurons in real time. Scientists are having to manually sort this vast amount of data. Therefore, to be able to read the entire connectome network, we will need advanced machine learning and data mining technologies. The processing power of computers has also developed exponentially over the past century. Similarly, computer memory has as well. If things continue this way, we will soon meet the necessary processing requirements. But when you upload your own brain to a computer, is it still really you? At the moment you create a copy of your brain, there are up to 2 parallel brains existing. When your real brain has died and your body has been cremated, what guarantees that the mind you just put into the computer is you? Or is it just another version of you that has just begun to exist? Unlocking the potentials of the brain could accelerate humanity's progress by millions of years of evolution, but it also leaves many truly frightening implications open. Do you think our brains are being held back? And are you willing to unlock the hidden potential within yourself to advance to a new society, a higher life? If you have watched this entire video, I believe that your brain truly has remarkable power. Our video today will end here. See you in the next video on our journey to explore the new secrets of the universe.